According to Forbes, the global higher education industry will be facing more than 30 billion US dollars in losses due to twin challenges of COVID-19 pandemic and students moving online. Higher education needs to adapt and digitalize to these situations to ensure their relevance in a market projected to be more than 117.5 billion US dollars by 2027. Driven by population growth and increasing household wealth, the TVET education market in ASEAN is worth more than 8.5 billion US dollars annually. But how can TVET training and education be digitalized to adapt to the new reality, and what challenges will it bring? I'm Rashdan Ramli, Chairman of Ruang Cikgu Berhad, and also today I'll be moderating this conversation on this topic. We are honored today to have 5 distinguished speakers coming from all over the world. And the first one is Professor Rupert Maclean, coming all the way from Australia, online of course. Professor Rupert Maclean is currently based in Melbourne, where he is an adjunct professor in the School of Education at MIT University, and also in Hobart, where as CEO, he oversees and participates in assignments of his Hong Kong-based consultancy company, Education Innovation for Development Consultancy. Prior to returning to Australia, he was based in Qatar, where he was chair of Foundation, CAPCO Professional in Vocational Training, UNESCO Chair for Technical and Vocational Training, and also co-coordinator for UNESCO Univoc Center for Qatar. From Malaysia, we have Encik Zainudin Kadir. Encik Zainudin is a TVET education practitioner, corporate trainer, and motivator. He is also founder and CEO of Thames Oxford Academy. He speaks on leadership and management, human resources development, customer service, and food safety areas. He is the president of Persatuan Pengusaha dan Tenaga Pengajar Sekolah Latihan Pengendali Makanan Malaysia. He is also a certified national industry expert on retail operations, a national dual training expert appointed by Department of Skills Department, and National Occupational Skills Standard Committee by MOHR. Coming from Thailand, we have Dr. Hugh Patrick O'Connell, who is the founder and managing director of ICDL Thailand Company Limited, with extensive experience in senior management, consulting, training, and lecturing. Dr. O'Connell is also the adjunct lecturer in management, leadership, strategy, and organizational behavior currently at Thammasat and Kasatrat Universities in Thailand. From Indonesia, we have Professor Dr. Muhammad Bruri Triyono. Professor Bruri is a professor of education technology of TVET at the Graduate School Universitas Negeri Yogjakarta. He is an expert on instructional design for TVET. Prof. Bruri is a board member of RAFT, the Regional Association of Vocational and Technology Education. He's also a member of the MOE National Team Task Force for SMK, and also a member of the National Board for Education Standards. Last but not least, from Malaysia also, we have Dr. Rahmad Shazi. Dr. Shazi is currently the Technology Director for ShazInnovation Solutions, focusing on social capital data analysis. He oversees the rollout of consultancy services that measures clients' internal and inter-organizational network effectiveness, the development of those networks in supporting business, firm culture, as well as associated interventions. He also previously oversaw several graduate employability programs, channeling graduates into high-value-added industries including aerospace, telecommunications, IT, and medical devices. Let us give our 5 panelists a warm welcome and a huge applause to our panelists. Okay, so we have here, we'll start off with Professor Rupert Maclean. Professor Maclean, if I understand correctly, you are in the midst of publishing a new book. Can you highlight the findings that you will be publishing in your book on the impact of COVID-19 on TVET education and training, and how technology will play a role in TVET education? And also, what fundamental challenges will this new approach face? Professor.
Well, thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to the organisers for having invited me to participate in this very interesting event. Yes, I have a book coming out, a joint book with two other colleagues from the Asian Development Bank. It's going to be published by Springer next week. And it's looking at how do we power learning societies during an age of disruption, with particular reference to the importance of TVET and the impact of COVID-19 on education and training. So what we argue is that we need to very substantially look at the re-engineering of education and training because of the fact that we're going through such enormous disruption in the world, which has a great impact on education and training. But the most apparent and recent and high-profile disruption is COVID-19. But there are also many other areas of disruption that have been going on in recent years where we really have to look at the taken for granted assumptions on which education and training, including TVET, of course, is based. We've got the fourth industrial revolution with an impact on Industry 4.0. We have this great disruption because of an increasing emphasis on green and inclusive economic growth and development, including the greening of economies, societies, and jobs. And with the greening of economies, what does digitalization have to offer and what does TVET have to offer? We have advanced digital technologies, we have robotics, we have artificial intelligence. We have the increasing partnerships between the private sector and various others, government and members of civil society. And most recently, the enormous impact globally and locally of the COVID-19 health pandemic, the largest health crisis in modern times. Now, all of these things require us to think in fundamentally different ways about education and training. For example, we know that because of COVID, online learning and skill development has become increasingly important. The digital gap for many learners and the rising inequalities, because many have had to learn from home, they've had to use digital technologies, they've had to use the internet. Well, it's fine if you come from a family that has internet connection and has access to such equipment. But what about the disadvantaged, the lower income groups in society? They've really missed out to a very large extent. We have changing modalities for reaching learners, distance education and e-learning. We have the concern about teacher and student well-being and mental health challenges due to isolation and having to work from one's residence. And of course, we also have parents, perhaps for the first time, really appreciating how important teachers are, because they've had to take a lot of the responsibility themselves within their own households. And they realize that teachers have very special skills and capabilities, which parents, in some ways, haven't got in the same ways. We've got increasing social isolation and social distancing. We have a revision of the content of curriculum because of these areas of disruption and things of that type. So what we argue in the book is that we have to very substantially re-engineer education for change. And this includes TVET. I know in my own country, Australia, TVET is becoming more and more and more important. It's now one of the priority areas within our system, where it's felt that we spent too much time in the past stressing academic studies. Although it's important to have academic, we haven't been looking enough at technical and vocational education and training. So these are the sort of issues that we think are very, very important. I'm keeping an eye on the time here. I don't want to run over time because we have other speakers. So in summary, we have to look at re-engineering education and training, including TVET, in the light of the major disruptions currently occurring in our region and in the world. COVID-19 is very important, but there are many other areas of disruption in terms of digital technologies, artificial intelligence, robotics, increasing social and environmental movements concerned with achieving greater equity in our societies and between societies, and green growth. So I think I better leave it there for the moment, and I can always answer questions later.
Thank you so much, Professor Maclean. We'll come back to you again. I think there's quite interesting points that you mentioned just now, especially on re-engineering of curriculum. We'll come back to you later to elaborate on that. I'll go to Encik Zainudin Kadir, and my question to him would be, you're very much involved in an area that is physical in nature, which is food preparation training. Can you share with us the strategies that can be used by similar physical courses to digitalize their course delivery? I think that's one of the things that's hard to do. Physical courses, and to do it online, that's a challenge. Can you just share your experience on this topic?
Hi, Rashdan. Thank you so much for having me today, and also thank you for all the speakers and others as well. Okay, first of all, yes, it has been a very challenging year for us, especially in terms of educators and also for the training companies. Yeah, and definitely for being a president of the Association of the Food Safety School in Malaysia. We have about more than 300 training providers, 700 trainers, and this row of people who are actually impacted during the COVID-19, whereby, the challenge is how we move on from having a normal way of doing things that is physically through the physical class, and now the choice what we have is to move into the new norm that is virtual. Yeah. Now, since pandemic, you all must agree with me that business are affected in many ways. Definitely, training companies also find it so difficult to continue. So the option now, it is going for virtual is no more is an option. It is a requirement. So what we have done, maybe my topic today very much skewed towards one case study that we can actually use this as an example, how we pull through. Yep, and what we have done in at early of 2020, we have actually conduct a survey. We noticed from the survey from the training providers and also the trainers, during the survey, 57.5% having difficulty. They say, oh, we can't survive for next 3 months. And balance, 42.5%, they say, yes, we can. So it clearly shows close to 50% of the business will, having difficulty. And when we probe that further, how is the business going to be during the pandemic? There is about 50% say that they will close close the business and maybe venture into other kind of opportunity. Yeah? Now, we also look at the what are the opportunity that we have, whether going online. And the good news is the response from the training provider, 62.5% say yes, the online is the opportunity, or moving into the virtual is a great opportunity. However, we have about 37%. It clearly indicates that the acceptance of change from the norm, always of doing physical to online is a great opportunity. And the 30% that one very much say that the reason why it is very much because the investment can be high. They find that it's so difficult to transfer the knowledge through kind of virtual training, and as well the standards of the quality of training may differ as well. Now, that is in terms of the training provider. But when we look at the trainers as well, and of course that's many of them as well, look at the opportunity as well to focus in terms of the virtual learning. Yeah. Now, bringing back to that, yeah, and as you can see that to survive now is all about change. Yeah, and we realize that we have the opportunity to survive and to continue the business by implementing change the way how we deliver the training. Now, to bring that, I think that we have a series of discussion with the Ministry of Human Resource, and the good news is I think the Malaysian governments are very supportive in terms of moving, allowing the training, especially in terms of food safety training. We don't say the whole skill training, but specifically in terms of the knowledge training part of it, it can be done through online. Yeah, and with the kind of supports, we started off with only 11 centers are given an approval. And as of now, after 1 year, we have about, out of 300, and about 114 are able to continue the business using the virtual platform. So this is a good news. However, we also noticed that there is quite a number of trainers or training provider still need to refocus on that. Now, with that, the opportunity is great, whereby from the having mindset of we are going to have business disruptions, but now we have a much more better opportunity to do the virtual online. Yeah. Now, one of the things that we noticed that I personally can share that is virtual and also physical. It is all about the mode of delivery. I think it is a good now. Today we have this what they call learning agenda, whereby in terms of the educations, whereby it is a method of delivering. You have to change in a way that and how we deliver. So in my own experience, comparatively with the physical and also the what they call virtual, the rating from the participants also getting about 4.8 to 4.9 over 5%. Yeah. Now, of course, what makes that more successful, I think, for educators, very importantly, is actually the learning management system. I think that the strategy that you use is so critical. If you have we have clear learning management system that can support the whole learning process, from the digitalization concept, from the registrations, from the module delivery, in terms of the assessment methodology, and as well other important part of it, you can put into the digitalization, that will be greater. Yeah. And other than that, of course, to incorporate, using that methodology that incorporate with kind of different kind of applications, making their virtual learnings are equal or better than the physical. That will be given a more acceptance kind of things. Yeah. And of course, as for Malaysia now, I think we are very happy to see the Malaysia government are very much supportive. I can see that like Human Resource Development Fund and as well the other organization, in fact, MDEC, have given a lot of grant or initiative to support the businesses in Malaysia. So what I'm trying to share very much is, I think for now, the option is moving into the virtual, and the impact of virtual training becoming very important, and this will definitely give a better opportunity for us to move on in current pandemic situations. Yeah. So with that, I think yes, I can Rashdan, maybe yes,
Okay.
we can have any question on that. Maybe we can actually answer that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sounds great. I think that's a good sharing, Zainudin, and I think that it's interesting that you just mentioned that one of the things that that's required. I mean, of course, it's a fundamental part of the digitalization is the LMS, and even something as simple as that needs to be addressed, by the institutions itself, and that's not even putting in the issues of content, right? We'll go to that more in the second part of our roundtable. I'll go to Dr. Hugh Patrick O'Connell first, and I understand that Dr. O'Connell, you have some slides that you would like to share first, and then I'll ask you some questions. Please go ahead.
Okay, just let me load them up. Can you see that now?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Is it coming?
Okay.
There it goes. Great.
Oh, perfect. Great. So thank you very much, Chair. And also thank you to the organizers and also to the Ministry of Education in Thailand, the OVEC commission here, who invited me to speak. I always, vocational education is a subject close to my heart. So I'm always very, very keen to support whatever initiatives are in the region on this. And as the Chair mentioned, I'm based in Bangkok. I've been here many years. And I wanted to basically talk about some issues with digitalization that you're going to face, and then provide some solutions. And it was very encouraging to hear the first two speakers. I think the key words I got from the first presentation were re-engineering, and from the second one was the opportunity. And I think that those two words really stuck on my mind as a good starting point for my presentation. So in the best traditions, if I can get my slides to move. Whoops, that's it. I want to start with some problems. And the first problem, if you are trying to incorporate digitalization, oops, I'm sorry, is that you have what we call in ICDL Foundation a perception versus reality. And we survey people all around the world, and you'll see here I just got a sample from Austria, Switzerland, Singapore, India. And the orange is the self-assessment, and the blue is how we assess their skills. And you'll see for the first one, general digital skills in Austria, 94% of people said they had very good to excellent skills. And when we tested them, only 39% did. And you can go through this using internet and email in Switzerland, 85% versus 34 when we test. In Singapore, general digital skills, we tend to think of Singapore as highly digitized already. In reality, they are only 55% as good as they think they are. And in India, word processing, the skills 84% versus 48%. So what we find is when we talk about digitalization, there's a perception that people think they are much better than they really are. And I think Donald Rumsfeld talked about the unknown unknowns. You don't really know where you are with it until you are tested and certified. So this is the background. So as a sort of TVET professional, you might ask, where would you start? What skills do you need for digitalization? And I would recommend that you look at the European framework called DigComp. And they are now developing DigComp 2.2. I think within 3 years, it's already gone up to 2.2, version 2.2. And I put a little QR code if you're interested in more information on that. But the areas you'd be thinking of, obviously, information data literacy. I think those are the obvious ones. And then we, as the previous speakers have mentioned, communication and collaboration come into the picture very quickly. Perhaps not so obvious things like digital content creation, which fits with LMSs and obviously there are other things as well. But safety is a key area. This is an increasing problem with cyberbullying and so on, particularly with children and at schools and getting into the vocational education area as well. And then finally, and we shouldn't forget problem solving. So how do you approach that? And from the foundation point of view, forgive the sort of plug for what we do, but we are a foundation and we drive digital skills throughout the world. We operate in about 100 countries. So what we've done is we've mapped those skills. You see the DigComp area on the left, information, data literacy, and so on, and the modules that we provide. So we work very closely in all countries in the region. We've got a very strong presence in Malaysia already, working with our partners. We work throughout the region, Thailand, Indonesia, Singapore, and so on. And you can see that if you were mapping or trying to work out a plan forward for digitalization for Industry 4.0, you could start to cover quite a lot of the areas that are needed through approaching a sort of methodological training through use of these areas. So the next issue is adapting to Industry 4.0. So far we talked about digital skills, but how do you link it to Industry 4.0? And I'm almost reminded of the young guy come to the meeting and saying, we need to take our company into Industry 4.0 using the Internet of Things on the cloud with artificial intelligence, big data, and using the blockchain. And the managers sitting around scratching their heads going, what language are you speaking? So the foundation has also looked to address these short courses to allow managers to better understand the implications of what Industry 4.0 actually means. So if we're designing vocational education towards Industry 4.0, I think it's very important that not just the students, but the teachers and the administrators and the government employees also have a good idea of what Industry 4.0 actually is all about. So obstacles, I'm aware of the time, so I'll go reasonably quickly. Digital skills gap, we've mentioned the perception versus reality, and we should focus on not just the students, but the teachers as well, and also administrators within colleges. I think it's very important. Lack of infrastructure, we've mentioned already in the previous presentation. Internet connectivity, hardware and software. What is available, what do you need, and so on. We're rushing to infrastructure. If we don't have the resources to be able to train up to that level, what are we going to do? Lack of understanding, and I think Professor Rupert was talking about this earlier. How do we prepare students for jobs we don't even know exist? We're sort of working with an unclear, fuzzy logic. We're not really sure what we're aiming at. We also have quite a lot of government intervention and control, and our recommendations from around the world is relax central government. Try and let the colleges work towards these goals themselves. And finally, money, which is always a little bit difficult. Vocational education sometimes gets the sort of short end of the straw, and I think that is wrong. We need to think both about the budgets and also about teachers' pay. We want to get the teachers in a comfortable position to be able to deliver these programs. So in conclusion, the advantages of digitalization far outweigh the disadvantages. We are on a route that we cannot really reverse. It's a necessity. We are faced with a multitude of challenges and progress can be slow. So do not get discouraged. However, the great opportunity, I think, from COVID has been the realization that we do need these skills. Everyone working from home, you can't go to school, can't go to college, can't go to work. So there's a sort of like the positive from it. We might need to involve both government and industry. Otherwise, we're sort of, again, floundering around without a clear direction. Which one comes first, the chicken or the egg? And in our opinion, we suggest that digitalization has to come first and that TVET plays a crucial role. And then from there, we can build our industry 4.0. So just to let you know, if you are interested in more information about ICDL, I've got the slides here. The organizers, please distribute if people want copies of them. We're around the region and we are here to help. So thank you very much for your time. I'm delighted to answer any questions that you might have. And back to you, the chair. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. O'Connell. Interesting point on the gap in perception, the perception gap. We'll go more towards that later. But now I'll go to Prof. Mochamad Bruri, Triyono. And I also understand you have some slides to share with us, Dr. Bruri. Please go ahead. You need to unmute.
Sorry. Okay, sorry. I think this is a great event. Thank you for the time, and then we can discuss about teaching and learning, especially in online platform. And I will share my presentation. Okay. Share. It's okay. Hello, are there my presentation?
You need to make your slide occupy the full space. You've also got the overview with all your slides down the left-hand side.
Okay. But you see that?
Yes.
Okay. The point of the digitalization of TVET toward Industry Revolution 4.0, especially in Indonesia, is about empowering rural community, because we know that in Indonesia it's not only how to teach in TVET, but almost all of the students, especially in vocational senior high schools in a rural area, and then we have more than 1,500 vocational school, and then now we have era pandemic like this, and then sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's better.
And then, okay.
That's good.
Yeah, okay. And then the background is about pandemic era in Indonesia, and then we have to, or the show must go on, especially in teaching and learning. Sorry? And then we have, a policy from my government, learning for home, and we know that there are we know that there are a lot of activities in online platform, but it's still difficult how to close to the give learning experience for the student in TVET, especially they usually use face-to-face activities, and then they usually know about the equipment. They usually do practicing in a workshop on a laboratory, but how to handle it after we have a policy that the condition of teaching and learning should be in an online platform. That's the problem. And then the other problem is about, we have mentioned before that about the rural area in Indonesia, and it's very big. We have a Making Indonesia 4.0. And then we know that in Industry 4.0, there are three kinds of thing about the digital technology, about the condition of work and social implication, of course. And then in Indonesia, we have Making Indonesia 4.0. There are 10 priorities of Making Indonesia 4.0. And then in 10 priorities, there are two priorities that close to the activities of teaching and learning in vocational education. They are empowerment, MSMEs, or micro, small, middle enterprise, and then developing quality human resources. And then we know that approximately 70% of Indonesian workforce work in micro, small, and medium enterprise. So that's the way. Even though we know that about Revolution Industry 4.0, we think about the high tech and high equipment and complexity of using the equipment in produce something goods, but actually reality in Indonesia, it's not like that. We still think that how to empowering the society in rural area should be like a vocational society. That's the point. That's something new that we have to develop that concept. Okay, and then how to run that concept. We know that in Indonesia, in the digitalization rural business entity, and then we usually call a BUMDes, Badan Usaha Milik Desa in Malaysia language or Indonesia. And then there are some of activities: tourism, agriculture and agribusiness, fishery, animal husbandry, trading unit, service and textile and fashion. And then of course in tourism, there are culinary, there are activities in restaurants, something like that. And then we try to close the concept of digital ecosystem that mentioned before by professor from Thailand and ILCD. And then in this concept, there are people, technology, channels or access and strategy. Of course, in a people, who people in here, and then what's the rule of TVET in here? So in this concept, and we try to close or we try to see about the teaching and learning in a class or in a teaching and learning in activities of education and training, especially in TVET. And then in a pandemic era, before we got a lecture like this, the majority of teaching and learning activities was implemented traditionally face-to-face. But in online platform, we must be applied to break the transmission of COVID-19. So that's the way we have a challenge how to prepare the online learning, but close to the activities of TVET area. And then we know that the principle of teaching and learning should be happy, and then they have to graduate to be one of the worker that they need. Online teaching material for vocational students are need according to the industry or fieldwork of competencies. But in this concept, we need technology support learning. So we have 6 area of competencies technology, or usually we call the technology literacy skills. The background is about the forces of the 21st century skills. And then there are 6 area of competencies. Students are creative, innovative in technology use, etc., etc. This concept is how to use the 6 area of this technology literacy skill in their subject of TVET. It is not easy. And then as a teacher, we are expected to enhance learning by engaging a student in activities requiring the 4 ECS of critical thinking, collaboration, communication, and creativity and innovation. And then the main concept in this teaching and learning in TVET, especially online, we try to develop about the media literacy skills, because that's the point. Even though we have good equipment, even though we have a good platform in online, but if the media literacy skills, or we use media in vocational education, is not close to the activities like a simulation, like the face-to-face, I think it's like it's pity, because we will waste time, and then we only have learning experience from the student only about like abstract of technology, something like that. It's not to note. And then by using media literacy skill for getting 6 area of competencies, we have to combine knowledge and skill related to content area in information literacy skills. And we know that in a Dale concept, there are teach others, practice doing, discussion, demonstration, audiovisual, reading, lecture, but the area of vocational skill in here. So why to give the student in instructional design that match with the learning experience after they graduate? That's the problem. And then of course, as a conclusion, that the main important to prepare the design, or to make a design instructional, is in media, because with good media, we hope that the student will more happy to get the subject of teaching and learning, and then they will get close, very close to the activities face to face. Even though we cannot ignore the activities face to face, but before they active face to face, and then might be only 10%, and 19% in activities with a good media, and then 10% they have to time to fill the activities face to face. I think it's enough, because until now we still plan a big research about how to evaluate the activities online, especially in TVET practicing in a workshop or in a laboratory, how to assess them, because it's not easy. Because in my mind, I think we need like a gamification, something like that. But of course, in a media platform, we will use like augmented reality and virtual reality. In the next, I will give an examples about that we have done, especially to prepare TVET teacher and training in my university using augmented reality and virtual reality. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Bruri. It's interesting that you mentioned about the new types of media that can be used to close the gap between face-to-face and online learning.
Yes.
We'll go to that later. I think you have something to show through. That'll be great. But before we do that, we'll do that in the next section of this roundtable. I'll go first to Dr. Rahmad Shazi. My question to you, Dr. Rahmad, is what would it take for employers to consider graduates of digitalized TVET programs to be at par with those attending in-person programs or face-to-face programs? Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rashdan, for that particular question. Of course, Assalamu alaikum and a very good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Welcome, salam.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. So let's get straight into it. How do we actually convince investors, employers, that these graduates are just as good? Let me share with you some experience of programs that we have carried out to give you an idea what's possible. Just building up on what Prof. Bruri Triyono mentioned just now. I was involved in the CTRM, for the Composites Technology Research Malaysia programs, development of Viristam. What is it? It is actually the development of a drilling training setup, virtual drilling training setup. But we need to give them haptic feedback. So it took us 3 years to really understand, hey, this is how people who drill composite panels would actually feel when they try to drill composite panels. Why is this important? Because a composite panel, perhaps 4 by 8 feet composite panel would be worth about 30,000 ringgit, as much as a car in Malaysia. Those are very expensive panels, and we can't make experimental panels or rather test panels. Every one counts. So we can develop these virtual systems, and we have, and they're actually in use over in Malacca. We've also developed technologies, virtual technologies that we've sold, or rather, when I say we, I mean Malaysia, that we've actually sold to Singapore to actually help assemble jet engines that they do over at Rolls-Royce Seletar. So this virtual training can lead to candidates who can fulfill or rather go into high value-add industries. Yeah. And for your information, food preparation, we count as high value add because you have to be creative. Creativity is high value add. A lot of people seem to think, oh, it's all dependent on the price of the food. No, it's not. It's actually the amount of effort, the amount of creativity that goes into creation of something that people consume or people use. So that's high value add, yeah? Now, there are other elements that we can actually carry out to ensure that graduates who are trained virtually will be accepted, just as good as one who go through this face-to-face training. So we talked about, or rather I mentioned about our experience developing these haptic feedback training systems virtually. We've worked with a few local universities to make use of virtual reality platforms. Now, of course, the problem with virtual reality platforms, you don't get haptic feedback. You don't feel the stuff. If you're, for example, if you're kneading dough, yeah, you don't feel the consistency of that dough to know how it should feel like, how springy it is. Yes, because at the end of the day, you might turn it into something high value like beef Wellington or something. Yeah, not just roti canai, which is very popular here in Malaysia, but high value stuff. So, of course, we need to actually carry out some sort of haptic feedback training on top of that virtual reality training. But we must have that virtual reality training in place. We must actually develop it and re-engineer it, as Professor Maclean pointed out, to actually align with those high value add activities. Let me share my screen to explain what I mean when I say high value add. Are you able to see that slide? The one that says high value TVET work.
Oh, yeah.
Lovely. Right, let me try to launch that presentation. So here we go, right? High value TVET work. Now, I like to talk about this because in Malaysia, a large portion of our industry are low value add work. What does that mean? The one on the left is a typical triangle of hierarchy of staff. At the top, we have the fat cats, the CEOs and what have you. In the middle, we have C-1 leaders, senior managers and what have you. And at the bottom, the followers, the TVET people who actually work on this items to process, create products, bringing material. But these are instruction driven. The technologies are acquired from outside the country. Technologies brought from outside, and we follow instructions. But when you take a look at high value at TVET work, we have TVET experts at the top, and they add a lot of value because of their haptic experience. 2, their understanding, what's known as allocentric understanding. Let me rephrase this. Allocentricity is the ability of TVET people to position themselves, for example, at the end of the tool bit, so to speak. Allocentric. Egocentric people, they sit in a location and they can figure out where things are around them. Allocentric people are people who can imagine if they are the tip of a drill bit that goes into somebody's mouth to train dentists. This is based on the work by Dr. Maria, I'm struggling with the surname, Koshevnikov. I believe she's still of Harvard University, but she comes over to NUS once a while over in Singapore. Yeah. So it's this ability that distinguishes the followers from low value add to those high value add, innovation driven TVET experts. The one on the right. That's how we can actually bring development of indigenous technology, either totally developing it from scratch or inserting it into existing systems, the systematic process, product or material improvement that's delivered to end clients and users, and they start to produce instructions. That ability, yeah, allocentricity and production of instructions for others. Now, those two can be achieved using virtual systems. Perhaps we need some sort of check test later on to ensure that the so-called experts have got the competency that tallies with their position. But that is possible, and we've seen it. We've done it actually for the past couple of years. It's not something that's beyond the horizon next couple of years. Ladies and gentlemen, we've done it already here in Malaysia. Where we struggle is to sell that particular value to others. Yeah, this has happened quite a number of times. I mean, I'll be more than happy to talk about it later on, perhaps during Q&A, to expunge upon this. So this is how, or these are the elements that, if it's embedded into the virtual training system, will enable the industry to actually say, okay, you're able to do these things. This is high value add. This is what we need. Fine, come on over. Yeah. There we go. When we move from low to high value add industries, the requirements in the center, yeah, high cognitive understanding of the complex processes. So they know the technical stuff, their bread and butter. They are able to challenge the status quo, bring their ideas to the top management, to investors, to the bosses, to actually say, hey, the system we have right now, it's great. Here's something better. And then take accountability in the decisions that they make. I actually had the opportunity to visit British Aerospace Salisbury a couple of years ago. And what I noticed was that half of the people who were leading the company were actually from the shop floor. Half. In Malaysia, that's almost unheard of. In countries which focus on low value add, that doesn't happen. But in high value add industries or nations that have a high critical mass of high value add industries, this happens. And if virtual systems can deliver these, there's no problem. Let me add my sharing, talking about the company KMWE, a Dutch company. They actually established a manufacturing facility up in Penang. 3 shifts. The last shift, totally lights out. Everything. In the evening, during the second shift, the human workers load up the blacks onto the machines. At night, during the night shift, everything is controlled by the technicians over in the Netherlands. And vice versa. When it's night over in the Netherlands, their processes are controlled by technicians over in Penang. They're not over there. Products, and the reject rates are quite low, relatively low. So yes, there are ways of making it happen. We need re-engineering to make sure that what exactly are the trajectories we need to train these people towards. Yeah, we need the enablers that Professor Bruri mentioned just now. And guess what? We have examples of it working already. And I hope that that gives us the confidence in actually embracing more virtual systems in training. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much, Rahmat, for sharing that. It's interesting to see, that there is already that acceptance by employers to, to consider virtual training as on par with physical training. In this second part of our roundtable, what we're going to do is each of you, all the 5 panelists, can also ask each other questions. I'll trigger some questions to get things started, but among yourselves, you can also ask, let's say if I'm asking Professor Maclean, you can just chime in and ask the questions, free for all, Royal Rumble style. You can just go ahead. Because I think it's interesting that all of you coming from different backgrounds, and I think that's a value that we're bringing to the table here, which is for you to be able to, rally on each other and get information out. I'm going to start on this topic with Dr. Maclean. You mentioned about re-engineering of curriculum, and as I understand it, it's in Malaysia at least, the re-engineering of curriculum is a very elaborate process, right? It takes a long time, maybe years, for something to change. But when it comes to IR 4.0, things are changing almost like, every quarter, if not monthly. Things are changing in the industry. How can the academia, TVET training and is able to catch up? Is there, a different kind of mindset, or is there a different kind of process that needs to be put in place to make this work with, many agencies involved in the whole process to get, curriculum certified? Dr. Maclean, can you answer that? To get things started, everyone can chime in later. Yeah. Professor Maclean, are you on?
Perhaps the audio didn't get through.
Is it audio?
Well, can I say that the sound is very unstable for me?
Oh, okay. Do you hear what I just asked just now about the re-engineering of curriculum?
The sound is very unstable
for
me, so
can someone...
I haven't heard your whole question.
Sure.
Right?
Can someone...
But I'll do the best I can.
Technical? Okay.
Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you very fine.
Loud and clear.
Like in there. Can you hear me now?
Hello?
Oh.
We can hear you, Prof.
Prof, we can hear very well.
Yes. I've had some problem with my video feed, so perhaps it's isolated.
Right. If someone can type the question I just asked just now to Professor Maclean, can someone help out and type the question? The question is, what would it take for re-engineering of curriculum to be made faster? Given that the industry is changing very, very fast. Oh, I think it's offline. Okay, I'll go to it's okay.
Can I jump in with some comments about your question, because it's really interesting, and I think it's worth coming through.
Right.
I was involved with some curriculum development at local universities here, and we were talking about IT curriculum development. And really, I'm not answering your question, but the issue was it took something like 3 to 5 years to when you started changing a curriculum or thinking about changing, actually to implementing in a university, and that involved not just the curriculum change, but also teacher training and making sure they had the skills to be able to implement it. So of course you were literally 3 or 4 years behind before you even started. So young people looking at vocational education, looking at university education, thinking about IT, I think there's a real problem there, because they're going to be learning basically stuff that's out of date. So what they learn at university is one thing, and then they go off and probably do their own programming outside it. And I think this is where we could talk about sort of self-learning skills. So I don't know if Professor Maclean's back again. Maybe he can jump in with some comments. We're just talking about curriculum development timeframe and how to re-engineer.
Hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
Can you hear me?
Loud
and clear. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's better.
Lovely.
Can you hear us?
Yes.
Good.
Loud.
Okay.
Lovely.
I'm sorry that when the I'm okay.
Okay.
For some time I couldn't hear the question from the speaker. I'm sorry about that.
It's okay.
And then I was cut off totally.
Right.
Can you still hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
If you can hear us now, I can repeat the question.
One question.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. I can hear you now.
Okay. So the question is, you mentioned earlier about re-engineering of curriculum, and here in Malaysia at least, the process, and also I think was Dr. Hugh Connell also mentioned the same thing. It takes a long time for curriculum to be changed and to be refined to the point where it can be given to students. And and technology is changing very, very quickly in terms of IR 4.0. How can agencies or even the government or institutions work faster? What kind of processes can you put in place to make it faster to get this curriculum changed?
Well, you're absolutely right. It's very challenging, isn't it?
Yep.
And what we know in many, many countries, businesses are dissatisfied with what TVET providers are doing. They feel that the TVET providers are looking to the past, not to the future, are not dynamic enough, are not changing rapidly enough, are not being innovative enough and things of that type. So it seems to me there has to be much more dialogue, much more partnerships. There has to be a genuine attempt to try and change things constructively in the light of digitalization, technological change, and so on. Many TVET systems are backward looking. They're preparing people for jobs in the past, not jobs in the future. They're not stressing learning to learn. They're not stressing giving the individual a capacity to take responsibility for their own learning and to update their learning. I think we also have to rely, particularly during the day of COVID-19, people weren't able to work in classrooms, often weren't able to get hands-on experience with equipment and things of that time. We have to look much more at digitalization in terms of simulation models and models that can be used when it comes to learners, learning through the computer, and then maybe they can actually get hands-on experience later. I've just been working in Qatar for 3 years, and they have a very well-developed system there for TVET in terms of using digitalization to give people real-life experience without actually being in an oil refinery or in a particular work venue. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it did. Anyone else from the panel who would like to ask Dr. Maclean, based on what he just mentioned? Maybe Dr. Rahmat or you would like to elaborate on that further?
Sure, Mr. Rashdan. Thank you for that opportunity. So Prof. Maclean hit the nail right on the head. Large numbers of training providers are still stuck in I was about to say the Stone Age, but I think that's a bit of an insult, considering that Mr. Zainudin's there. You might say, hey, is that bad for me? No. Yeah. But in reality, a lot of industries, especially in Southeast Asia, are, again, low value add. And what that means is that they don't really require that particular shift. However, of course, part of the reason is the economies, the governments of the day sustain that particular trajectory, which is a problem. However, I have to actually salute the Vietnamese and the Indonesian governments, because they've realized this, and they've realized, hey, we need to actually shift. And I'm sure Prof. Triyono is one of the people who are driving that particular change. And it's exactly the same trajectory that Prof. Maclean mentioned. The challenge is now to convince industry, hey, you need to actually change the way things are done. Yeah. If you keep focusing on low value add, the graduate that we produce, yes, they'll probably be able to work there, but you'll probably pay them low salaries, and we'll never get out of this middle income trap, which, by the way, Malaysia is in. That's acknowledged. So we need to actually convince not just training organizations, but of course the end clients, the industry, that this is better. But we also then need to convince the policymakers, look, you need to actually shift gears. It's a well-known fact, almost like an open secret here in Malaysia, that, hey, low value add industries equals more foreign workers, equals, for example, greater revenue to the government. Yeah, that is one of the things that we acknowledge. But for how long? The COVID, there's a silver lining behind that particular pandemic. It has forced us to severely look at or relook at how we do things. And Malaysia has lost out, or rather is slightly behind in opportunities in foreign investments, because at the end of the day, we don't have the data to be aligned with the requirements that Prof. Maclean outlined, and also and what Dr. O'Connell mentioned just now. Let me share with you my own personal experience then. I think that way nobody can actually say, hey, yeah, you're lying. No, I was there. So we were actually working with MyRAS, the Malaysian Robotic Association, to actually bring in 10,000 jobs. 3 US companies planning to actually come into Malaysia. Cut a long story short, they asked us a question, do you have this set of data for high value add TVET staff? We didn't. Vietnam did. And Bob's your uncle. The all 3, 10,000 high value jobs, which could have really, really driven the local economy as well as state economies here in our country. So we need that re-engineering sooner rather than later. We need to convince the industries that that's the way forward. Again, Malaysia should actually take a look at what Indonesia and Vietnam has done, because that's definitely the way to go. I believe with that happening, this change in the re-engineering would have real takers of the people, of the human capital we actually produce. That's essentially my perspective at this point in time.
Great.
Back to you, Mr. Rashad.
Thank you. Dr. Bruri, because your academic expertise is about content development and instruction design, and we've been talking about re-engineering, and one of the key elements is going to be the content itself, right? The content and the way content is delivered, simulation is delivered. You did mention something about AR and VR. Is there anything you would like to share on that? Is there some samples you would like to show, to us today? Dr. Bruri?
Okay. Actually, I want to comment about the thing, the important thing from Professor Rupert Maclean about the re-engineering curriculum. In vocational education, I think we have to do like that, because the curriculum is not only in the end of activities, just to measure about someone who graduate from the vocational education and training, get competence in skill. Not like that. In the future, I think it's not like that, because the important thing is about the process. Because Mr. Kono said that the IT is important now, because almost all of the young people have a mobile, a smartphone, something like that, and then they can do everything with activities in vocational education, teaching and learning. And you know that almost in everywhere there are some autonomous. If they only know about how to use the equipment in autonomous, they have a skill to operate the equipment in autonomous. I think it's not like that in the future for the TVET, but they have to know about the process. They have to know about how to make change about the traditional activities in equipment to be autonomous in activities in equipment. For example, in Indonesia, so in the rural area, there are a lot of plantation, and how to give the society knows about how to use IoT, how to use big data, something like that. That's important for the society. Society, it means like young people. Young people, it means someone who study in vocational school, know about their activities in their rural area. For example, in west of Yogjakarta, there are a special batik, and then they have to know about how to make a good batik in that area, and then they have to know about how to market that batik, how much the people need the batik like that, and they have to know about that, and impossible if they don't know about the big data or IoT, something like that. So how to deliver about the activities close to the face-to-face activities in Tibet before pandemic, and then I will share about the. Sorry. I think this is not yet. Just a minute. Sorry. Okay, it is. Okay.
Yes, we can see it, Prof.
Yes.
Great.
Good, thank you.
Okay.
If you can make the presentation bigger.
Yes. In my in my university, for example, this is the research between UTSM and my university, and then some of activities in how to make good media for close to the activities, real activities, face to face, is in civil engineering. We use this residential structural
components.
I think Prof froze.
Yeah, it's froze again.
Alamak, I see, man. I was following. Oh well. But this is BIM Lab, Building Information Modeling, I think.
Right.
Yeah, we were involved in this a couple of years ago.
Okay.
Very fascinating. It's an extraction of the aerospace industry into the construction industry. It will actually really help eliminate corruption.
Right, because you can get the correct amount of materials. Is that correct?
Exactly,
Yeah, right.
spot on.
Yeah. So in the context of TVET, these are the kind of tools that are going to be used by by the learners online. If they were to be able to do this, they can use these tools to essentially learn the skill sets of TVET, right? Is correct? Of the trade. Okay, while we're waiting for Dr. Bruri, I'm just going to ask on the ground to Encik Zainudin. Yeah? Since you're very close to the ground when it comes to training, right? Do you see that there is, there's problem with the learners when it comes to, accessing or actually having the skill sets to access digitalization? Do they have this fundamental problem of as what Dr. Connell had mentioned, there is a perception gap about skill set that they think they have and what they actually have. So do you see this, Dr. Zainudin, on the ground?
Okay. Now the thing is, let me share with you a bit about the impact. Yeah, we have made the changes from the very much in terms of the physical to the virtual, and I have some interesting fact to share with you. Because at the end of the day, the educators, if they are able to transfer the knowledge very well, regardless whether physical or online, that is give a lot of impact to skill up. Yeah. Now, I have a very I've done a bit of survey in terms of how can we make sure that with this transformation using digitalization, the quality remain the same. And the learner will get the higher impact in terms of the skill, knowledge, and attitude required for them to perform the job. Now, if I don't mind, I share you the slides that I have here. Can you see the slide here? Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yes. If you go to the slide here, it is now. I have only two slides that I'm going to share with you now. Number one is the if you look at this, is what survey we have done for a sample size of 50 packs for 2 different sessions, and this is specifically for online. So with the proper digitalization transformation, and this particular survey is also we use the trainer effectiveness evaluation, whereby we will try to find out and see the impact from the session through online learning. So out of 5, we have batch number 1 with a total of 25 sample size. We have rating of 4.7 out of 5. And the next one is we have 4.8 out of 5. It clearly shows that by having a digitalization, a lot of people say, no, digitalization, you're using a virtual platform, the quality may be a problem, and then the learner may not get the impact. I think that we have to change now. By looking at the data that I show you now, it clearly shows that we still can get the excellent kind of rating if we use a right methodology in terms of delivering. When I say methodology in terms of, as Mike mentioned earlier, the learning management system, using activity-based kind of things, and use various kind of applications available. Like example, you may use like a Quizy, or you can use Kahoot and other activities to complement the learning transfer. And also ensuring the trainers also having the right way in terms of know how to use the virtual platform. And we incorporate a right kind of assessment methodology using the learning management system. If you look at the next slide here, And if you look at the next slide, this is the offline session physically. So, and what I'm trying to show now here, actually, the difference between the offline session rating and online session rating, very, very marginal. If let's say there is a way for us to transfer the knowledge correctly. And another good fact that I'm going to share with you as well, this is a bit about what we have done using the virtual platform. And the number speaks a lot. If let's say we were to continue to remain in a way that we have done before, not changing in a new way or new way of doing the training, these numbers will not be possible. By looking at the total 4,780, this is what we did for food safety training during the pandemic. And of course, we also have other training like, with the Penjana Place and Train in Malaysia. And out of that numbers, I think 50% of these numbers, or 614, is come from virtual training. If at the end of the day, to summarize this, if we don't change the way that we do, we may become obsolete. So, but if we can actually look at that opportunity and having a right way of transferring, I'm sure that it will win in terms of the building the economy through skill set, and the impact will be better. Last but not least, let me share with you, there is some the quotes that are very common. It is not about the strongest of the species that survives, but the most adaptable. This is what happened to a lot of us now. I think changing is, as I say, is not an option now. It is a requirement.
Great. I think that's a great sharing. Dr. Bruri, are you ready to show? You got cut off just now. Are you ready to show the slide, your application? Go ahead, please.
Okay. This is the detail of Prof construction join, and then it's impossible if we use in a real activities. We can open. It's okay. Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you. You can share the screen now. Yeah, go ahead, please.
You can see.
We can't see yet. I think you're not sure.
Okay.
You haven't shared.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. For example, this we have a benefit in this when we use this, because when we use the real activities, we can open actually the big buildings like this. But in augmented reality, we can open it, and then we can see about how the join between burns between this construction, and then where is the pin, something like that, and that it's real.
Right. Dr. Bruri, we can't see your screen, your shared screen. Are you sharing a screen? Because we can't see that right now. Because we can't see there was a picture before that you showed at the screen of your slide, but we can't see it now. Can you share that?
Okay. I will. Okay. Okay.
Great.
Okay, great.
That's nice. Yep.
Okay. This is how to deliver about the construction of building. For example, this is the residential structural components, and then in a real activities, face-to-face activities, it is not easy to see in deep. We have to up until there and then open the roof, something like that. But this is the benefit when we use augmented reality. And then we have a menu like this, and then we can choose everything that they want in mobile like this, and then they can see in a reality about the construction of bar beam, something like that, and then there are some pin, something like that, and then it's real. And then when we use about the bridge, it's like the big building like before. In the bridge, it's impossible if we want to know about the construction. This is usually there are street, and then this is the big construction about the bridge, and then they are more detail about the paint, something like that, and then that's more more reality, but not face-to-face activities. And then we have a program like that. You can click this, and then we can find in YouTube about the augmented reality for these activities. And then in my university, we have like a virtual reality about the. There are a choice of traditional restaurant, cave restaurants, dining restaurants, so that a user can freely choose restaurant and try to taste food and match the atmosphere of the restaurant. They can try like this. It is easy to use in delivery with the student in others place. It's not only in campus. And then we have like this about the augmented reality for learning media development, augmented reality, higher coloring, something like that. But all of the activities in teaching and learning or deliver in media is not direct to get a good learning experience. It's like this, and then we can see about in the end learning outcomes is improving the practical subject learning outcomes in terms of introductory theory before student practice independently. So it's like I just information about the 9%, 90%, and then 10% they have to do real activities in their home maybe, or their group in a rural area, for example, like that, or they come to the campus, but with a high protection about the pandemic condition era, something like that. And then the conclusion is about new paradigm through online learning habits. Teachers are getting used to develop online teaching material. The teaching material used are in accordance with the competencies that are required by the industry or field of work. So that's the way, in the end of the conclusion, in the long term, the industry or field of work can participate to develop and update teaching material. And I agree with Professor Maclean and others that in this forum that it is not easy to prepare the design, instructional design, but we try to do this and we try to minimal, close to the real activities in teaching and learning, especially in TVET area. I think that's from me. It's all. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Bruri. It's interesting. I just mentioned about in that you showed an example of a restaurant VR. When before when from what Dr. Rahmat said, it looked to me like you can only use this haptic feedback and VR and AR on higher value added industries. Things like composite. But you're using this for even simpler things, but where they don't have to go, especially for services industry. It's just interesting for me because you can use this not just for manufacturing, but also for services industry, right? And it's something that can be used. But one thing that I caught from there is the fact that you're saying one of the key elements is about assessment. How do you assess, right? Yes. But how do you do this? I mean, like when you have an online, does it mean that regardless of how you do this, there needs to be a hybrid mechanism where you have both, face-to-face and online? Can you elaborate on that, please?
Yeah. I think that's good. This question, and then the big question for me in Yogyakarta State University, how to develop the assessment for them, because it's until now it's still we discuss a lot about that close to the real activities in learning experience after they finish their study in vocational education. And then there are some suggestions that we will use the gamification. It's not like just to see the video from the student that they have done about the tasks or about something that they have done in their home to do something. But there are some suggestions that we will use gamification. So we still develop about the assessment in gamification. But sorry about that, because I think this is a good time to discuss about this. give me information from Professor Maclean and others that
Can someone, can I want to chime in on this? I mean, about assessment, because I think that's critical to, the end result, which is the outcome. Dr. Maclean, Dr. Rahmat, Dr. Connell, can you chime in on this topic?
Well, I think
we've got lost
assessment is
Dr. Maclean.
extremely important, and it has to be performance-based, not just a theoretical understanding, but actually hands-on performance-based. And assessment is so important because often in many places, assessment drives the rest of the system, right? If you're going to assess in a particular way, that will affect the behavior of teachers and learners. For example, if assessment is mainly by paper, can you hear me okay?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Yeah. If assessment is mainly, for example, paper and pencil tests, well, then teachers will teach accordingly and learners will learn accordingly. So we have to make it really performance-based, hands-on demonstration of abilities. If I can raise another issue just for a moment, when it comes to digitalization in TVET, there are major inequalities between learners and between businesses and between TVET trainers in their ability to use digitalization. It actually can increase the inequalities. What are you doing in your various countries to make sure that this increasing digitalization isn't creating more and more inequalities between businesses and between learners? What are you doing to try and promote equity, fairness, equal access, and equal quality?
So in essence, we need to also look at bridging the digital divide, so to say, between the different parts of the ecosystem to ensure that the gap is closed, or made smaller. Is that correct, Dr. Maclean?
Hello.
Can you hear me? Dr. Maclean, can you hear me? No, he can't. Dr. Rahmat, do you have anything to say about that? Or Dr. O'Connell, can you have something to say about that topic?
I think Dr. Connell had something to add just now.
Sorry.
Hello.
It's very interesting listening to the panelists with their views, and I think you're absolutely right to look at assessment. And one of my points on the slides I made was to, let's say, reduce the officialdom within the vocational education. And I know locally they've been looking at doing things like having a more flexible points-based curriculum. So you have your core subjects, and then you can go out, say, to work with industry, and then you get points. And again, there's obviously problems and challenges for assessment with industry work, but that perhaps would solve one of the problems that Professor Maclean was talking about, the divide between what we have in for what the students do and what business actually wants. So I would be very keen to suggest that there's a relaxation of the curriculum, that students and teachers can design their own sort of, let's say, direction based on their career path. And it makes a flexibility. So you might have, say, 20-25% of the curriculum is points-based on some external activities or internal activities or qualifications that are maybe formal or non-formal. And that might help bridge the gap that Professor Maclean was talking about. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Connell. Rahmat, would you like to say something about that on assessment? I think that's key.
Yes, please. Again, one of the issues that we struggle with is industry participation. And I guess that's one of the questions I would like to hear from, or rather answered by Prof. Triyono, as to the industry participation. Without the industry as the end driver and user of the training, we'll be hard pressed to actually answer the question, so why are we doing this training? Why are we doing this assessment? And one of the compelling reasons to do re-engineering, I think Prof. Maclean touched on this, is the need to ensure that our next generation starts driving the socio-economy rather than become end users of technologies that's developed elsewhere. If the training is not aligned to that, the assessment, online assessment especially, and assessment needs to be, our experience is that the assessment needs to be done partially by industry representatives. Are they financially, are they their payment consummate? So I'm struggling with that word. Does it match their expertise? Most of the time, we don't see it in majority low value add industries, but it's very much appreciated over in countries like Australia and the UK. That is one of the factors behind the inequality. Industry just at the end of the day say, well, we don't need to actually participate in this. You have your own modules, and perhaps your agency that's responsible to maintain the quality, you don't want to listen to us. Now that's a touchy topic here in our country, to indirectly answer Prof. Maclean's question. So until that happens, well, the good thing about that is that we'll still send students overseas, which is good for the economies of the Western countries. Right. But on a more serious note, until the industry plays a far bigger role in the outlining of the assessment and the trajectories the trainees need to achieve, we won't get anywhere, or rather we'll be left behind. That's basically. Back to you, Mr. Rashdan.
Great, thank you so much. Actually, I have one question I wanted to ask Dr. O'Connell since the earlier part. Was that, ICDL deals mainly with computer skills, which is relatively easy to basically try, convert online. But one of the areas that you're working on is digital, is about teaching management, leadership, and strategy and organizational behavior, right? And those are very high touch, very personalized, very in-person experience for the students. How are you transferring that experience? Because I think it's relevant not just for you in this case, but also for a lot of the other courses. Is how do you transfer that personalized experience, the kind of connection that you have between trainer and student, and which is a lot of times absent online. How do you recreate that? How can we recreate that? Something that can be, anyone can answer this question, but I'm asking Dr. Connell first because he's got the experience. How would you deal with that, to recreate that experience?
I think this is a great challenge that we're all facing at the moment. And I think we're, most of us, well, perhaps me, myself, are feeling our way of how to create better interaction. And even, this conference using Zoom at the moment, some of the challenges are just people dropping out and so on. I think we're all facing. I attend quite a few committee meetings, and we had a sort of hybrid committee meeting the other day, and there were some of us actually meeting in the office, and then others meeting online. And of course, as soon as the online meeting finished, we all start chatting, and there's a whole dimension that we're missing of, let's say, human interaction face to face, as you're saying. So. Perhaps as technology develops, we'll see more innovation in this area. Some other statistics that you might find interesting, we actually helped with, during COVID last year, with vocational education. And we had some basic training online. And again, it wasn't particularly all song or bells and whistles education. It was really basic education. But the vocational schools here were looking at opportunities. And we ended up having about 80,000 students on our system and about 40,000 teachers. And what was very, very interesting was the 80% of those of the students were accessing our system by mobile phone, which created a lot of challenges. So even when you talk about adapting media to make it more interactive and more, let's say, personable, you've still got challenges of what platform they're going to be using. The typical student was spending 13 minutes on their mobile phone every time they accessed our system. And again, we thought that was quite high, and particularly when you've got distractions. So not only have you got a mobile phone in front of you, but then suddenly you've got your WhatsApp message coming in, and mum says, are you going to be home for tea? What do you do? Do you stop doing the education? Do you respond to mum or not? So you have distractions as well. And then other things that were causing problems were bandwidth, and then who was paying for the bandwidth as well. So these are just sort of examples of the challenges that we faced. And quite frankly speaking, I don't think we've got, I've actually come across the absolute answer. I was very interested in Professor Bruri's ideas with his 3D and the virtual reality, and you mentioned haptic feedback and these sorts of things. We are getting there, But I still think we need to be, let's say, aware that face-to-face contact, classroom contact is still critical in any education sense. So I hope that gives you a sort of an answer.
Definitely. I think that's a challenge not just for TVET, but for any type of education, I presume. Anyone else would like to add to that, especially on the face-to-face interaction and how we can, at the very least, recreate some of that? I mean, the challenge will be, the first startup in Silicon Valley or in Malaysia or in Jakarta or in Thailand, or everywhere, can recreate that, that face-to-face interaction. Will be the company that will be the next billion-dollar company. But does anyone have an idea about that? I mean, Dr. Maclean or Dr. Bruri or Rahmat, do you have any idea on how, at the very least, we can try to close that gap?
Well, I agree. I agree that face-to-face learning has a very, very important role to play. Of course, we can achieve useful things using the internet and things like that. But this contact between teacher and learner, physical, face-to-face contact, I think is absolutely crucial if we're going to really have sophisticated learning patterns, not just mechanistic learning patterns. And the reality is that many workers, when they're actually joining the labour force, despite the changes that have occurred with COVID-19, with people working from home and so on, but still in the future, I believe that some face-to-face contact is going to be very important when it comes to contact with customers, when it comes to contact with partner organisations and so on. So, I think we have to try and do something to make sure we don't ignore the importance of this face-to-face contact and to build this adequately into our systems of instruction, training and education.
Great. Dr. Rahmat, anything you want to say about that?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yes, of course. Thank you. Let me share with you our recent I wouldn't say recent findings, but the analysis that we found a couple of years ago. So just a background story, we were asked to actually help reskill we were supposed to actually select 300 out of 1,200 graduates of Selangor to be reskilled to high value jobs, including TVET. And what we discovered is this. Let me see whether I can get those slides out again. Right, is that on your screens? The innovation value chain, that's...
Okay. Yes, it is. Yeah. Yes.
Right, lovely, lovely. So I'll skip through. So this is what we found. We discovered that these were the 3 skill sets that's required in order to get the buy-in from investors or from top management for ideas, from technical ideas. And so this is the context, this is the corpus. We're focused on technical students. We found that students must understand their bread and butter, their high-end cognition, must have the linguistic skills, including paralanguage, that's body language skill sets. I've lost count on the number of students, or rather presenters, who had a problem with the congruence between the messaging and their body language and their intonation. And to investors, that sends a lot of message. And only face-to-face experience will really refine those. Those are the high-value jobs that we're looking for. We're currently delivering training for InvestKL, an invest arm of Kuala Lumpur, and they're saying this is the biggest problem. It's not about the technical skill sets. Most of the graduates can do it, TVET or any other particular field. It's the ability to get the message congruent, and the third portion is the communication chemistry. Now, this is actually a leaf out of performing arts. The ability of the presenter to really, measure, layman's term, measure whether what they say is really getting across to the audience. In even online presentation platforms or whatever, you can't deliver the same level of high touch richness that face-to-face assessment and training can really deliver. So I concur with Dr. O'Connell's suggestion, or indeed, it's not a suggestion. I think it's a universality. We need face-to-face training at the end of the day to really find out whether that particular graduate has picked up the high-value skill sets. technical skill sets, a dime a dozen, especially here in Malaysia, sorry to say, but the ability to get the message, to sell the idea, to get buy-in of the investor, like Dragon's Den or what, Shark Cage or Shark something. I was about to say Shark's Fin, that's not right. Shark. So, okay, but you get my drift.
Right.
And these are the skill sets that initially we thought can be delivered using pure virtual reality platforms. We don't see it. And those are the high value jobs that InvestKL call C-2 people, C-2 technical leaders. We are lacking those people, and we are reverting to face-to-face training or snippets of it to make sure that our graduates, can actually pull in those investors. Yeah. So face-to-face.
So basically what I'm hearing is there needs to be, to scale up in terms of numbers, you need to have digitalization. When it comes to adding the last mile, the last 10%, when it comes to assessment or building the human skill sets, the soft skill sets, requires that face-to-face interaction. So it's more like a 80-20 or 90-10, between digitalization and face-to-face. So it has to be
Some
a
sort of
hybrid.
hybrid.
Right.
Yes, exactly. Because at the end of the day, for industry, it's a logic regression. It's a 1 or 0. There's no grades A, B, C, D, or E.
Right.
It's yes, you're good for it enough. Oh, sorry, out you go.
Prof. Bruri, anything you want to add to that?
Yes. Even though we still need face-to-face for vocational education, especially deliver the subject in a TVET area. But we know that the pandemic era trigger us to use the online platform. But we must never forget that it's more than just a digital platform, but it's about a human and human interaction. So that's the way in a next activities, if the pandemic is end, and then we still have a benefit to use a digital platform, because with the digital platform we can save the time, we can give the activities by the student itself. It's not only just to give from the teacher to the student, but they can explore their activities. I think it's still a benefit for us to use the digitalization in TVET activities. Thank you.
Thank you. It's interesting you just mentioned that digitalization is here to stay, and not just because of pandemic, but also because that will be the method or the medium that will be helping to close the gaps between the rich and poor, the rural and the urban. And I think that's interesting you just mentioned that it's not just a COVID or pandemic flash in the pan, but also something that's going to be here to stay. We're about to conclude this, so I'm going to give each and every one of our panelists, distinguished panelists, to give our dear last wrapping up words for this panel today. We'll start with our first panelist, Professor Rupert Maclean. Anything you want to say as final words?
Yes. I think the topic we've examined is very important. I think the impact of digitalization is very important. What I suggest is we must bring together the various partners in this exercise: government, private enterprises, members of civil society. And we have to look at not just making a few adjustments here and there. We have to look at the fundamental foundations on which TVET is built and start to question the taken for granted assumptions to try and accommodate the sorts of challenges that we're facing currently. So we have to look at re-engineering education for change, re-engineering TVET for change, not just tinkering with the system.
Thank you, Professor Maclean. Zainudin, anything you want to say as final words?
Yes, okay. I think I also definitely agree that it's during our discussion just now, we talks about virtual learning, and also that it's important to remain as there is a face-to-face kind of things. Definitely, I think there is in TVET, I think there is a skills that we are focusing, and I think the element of assessment and elements of on-job training, that I think the face-to-face requirement is still there because there is a lot hands-on required. Yeah, but nevertheless, I think we have greater opportunity for us to progress to have the blended or hybrid kind of mode. Yeah, thank you.
Great, thank you. And Dr. O'Connell, would you like to say something?
Yeah, I would like to say ditto and ditto. I think what Professor Maclean said and Mr. Zainudin absolutely spot on. I was reminded of the presentation by Ken Robertson, who was an educator from the UK, ended up in the US, and he had the TED Talk, and it's probably the most popular TED Talk, and he talked about the 3 pillars of education, the syllabus, the assessment, and the pedagogy. And of course, we tend to focus on the syllabus and the assessment because those are the easy ones, but the actual pedagogy is the problem area.
Yep.
And he was very keen to get creativity within education, and we should focus on how to develop creativity in education as well. And so in his memory, I'd like to mention him, and unfortunately passed away last year, but his words of wisdom, I think, strike a chord with most of us. So thank you very much for this opportunity. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. O'Connell. Prof. Bruri, any final words you want to say?
Yes, for teaching and learning in vocational education, I think I agree with Mr. Maclean and others that ShazInnovation solution there, they mentioned about we have to know about what the industry need, what the government need, what the policy in each country, something like that. So the first is about how to meet mapping of occupation in each countries that they need, because it's very specific. Like Indonesia, maybe it's still in not 4.0, but still 3.5, something like that. But we have to know about that. And then the second is about things about the habit of teaching and learning. It's not like before. We have to use a new platform about teaching and learning, especially with the issue of curriculum, re-engineering of the curriculum in TVET. And then, of course, the collaboration with industry to find what is suitable to development of didactic. It's not only pedagogic, but didactic is very important to know about how to good teaching, how to know about how to deliver about the activities, especially in the process of to give the student of good experience learning before they graduate from their school. I think that's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bruri. And final last words, closing remarks from Dr. Rahmat.
I think it was Khalil Gibran who said, "A teacher who walks in the shadow of the temple among his followers gives not of his own wisdom, but rather of his faith and his lovingness. So he brings us to the threshold of our own minds." We need to ensure that the assessment methods helps our trainees get to the threshold of their own minds rather than ours. Until and unless that happens, we're going to be stuck with, there's a phrase here in Malaysia, like people coming out of a biscuit factory. Every biscuit looks the same.
Cookie factory.
Yes, and we're experiencing that particular problem at this particular point in time. So creativity that was mentioned, we need to actually find a way of really re-injecting that back into our education and for TVET as well. And the face-to-face element has to be the crux of things, not the technical side. And I say that with, as somebody with a technical background, there's just too much numbers focus and not the value that we deliver to the people. That should be our particular focus at the end of the day. And I guess, considering that surgeons and doctors are also TVET people, if you think about it, that explains their bedside manner, perhaps.
True.
Back to you, Mr. Rashdan.
Thank you so much. I think today we've heard from 5 very experienced panelists. And these just not insights that we can get anywhere, but I think it's insights, even for myself, I've been in the industry for a long time, it really struck a chord with me when they mentioned a lot of these key elements, and it something that, especially re-engineering of curriculum, the hybrid mechanisms for learning, the new instructional designs, methodologies, and these are the things that we need to go forward. And I would like to thank all our panelists today for sharing the insight, the knowledge that have been gathered for so many, many years and decades. And with that, I would like to close this panel, and I would like to ask the audience, both in the hall and also online, to give a very big round of applause to our 5 panelists. Thank you so much. And with that, we end our roundtable panel for today. Thank you very much, guys. You've been the best.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cikgu. Thank you, Prof. Maclean. Thank you, Prof. Triyono. Thank you, Dr. O'Connell. And thank you, Mrs. Zainudin.
Thank you for the
Thank you all.
very interesting. Thanks for the moderation.
Great chat.
Great.
Very interesting.
Say.
Awesome.
Hope to meet you all sometime.